Once upon a time, in the great land of Israel, there lived a mighty king named David. King David was a great leader, a warrior, and a man who loved God with all his heart. His bravery had helped Israel win many battles, and his wisdom brought peace to the kingdom. But King David was getting old, and the time was coming for him to choose someone new to lead Israel. Who would it be? Would it be his older son, Adonijah, who dreamed of being king? Or maybe someone younger, someone with a heart as wise and kind as David's? But wait, there was another young man in the royal family. His name was Solomon, David's son with Bathsheba. Solomon was known for his love of learning and listening to God's wisdom. Could Solomon be the one to take his father's place? What did God have planned for Israel? Get ready for an exciting adventure as we dive into the amazing story of how Solomon, the son of King David, was chosen to lead God's people. This story is full of wisdom, faith, and trusting in God's perfect plan. So let's get started. As the years went by, King David grew older. His once strong and powerful body began to weaken. He could no longer lead his army into battle or govern the kingdom like he used to. The people of Israel loved David for the courage and wisdom he had shown throughout his life, but they knew he would soon need to choose someone to take his place as king. David spent many days thinking and praying about the future of Israel. He wanted a king who would lead the people in the right way, someone who would listen to God and care for the kingdom with kindness and wisdom, just as he had. But there was a problem. One of David's older sons, Adonijah, believed that he should be the next king. Adonijah was tall, handsome, and very strong. He had many followers who were eager to see him on the throne. He thought to himself, "I'm the oldest, so it's only fair that I should be the next king." But King David wasn't so sure. David had promised that his younger son Solomon would take the throne after him. Solomon was very different from Adonijah. While Adonijah was always eager to show off his strength, Solomon was more thoughtful and quiet. He loved spending time learning and listening to wise people, especially about the ways of God. Solomon didn't try to force himself forward or show off in front of others. Instead, he waited patiently and trusted that God's plan would be revealed in time. As David's health continued to fail, Adonijah saw his chance to act. He began gathering his followers, secretly planning to make himself king before David could officially declare Solomon as the next ruler. Adonijah thought that if he acted quickly, no one would be able to stop him. He called a big feast where he invited many important leaders to celebrate his plan to become king. Adonijah believed that his father was too weak to stop him, and Solomon was too quiet to challenge him. But what Adonijah didn't know was that God had a different plan. Solomon, the one who trusted in God's wisdom, was about to become Israel's true king, and Adonijah's rebellion would not go as he expected. While Adonijah was busy planning to take the throne, Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, had not forgotten the promise King David had made. Long ago, David promised that Solomon, their son, would be the next king of Israel. Bathsheba knew that this was God's plan for Solomon, but with Adonijah trying to make himself king, she needed to act quickly. Bathsheba decided to go and speak to King David. She entered the king's chamber, where David was resting, weak from his age. She knelt before him, her heart full of worry for Solomon. "My lord," she said, "you swore by the Lord your God that my son Solomon would succeed you as king. But now Adonijah has declared himself king, and you haven't even told the people who should truly sit on the throne." Bathsheba feared that Adonijah's actions might lead to trouble for Israel if Solomon wasn't declared the true king soon. Just then, the wise prophet Nathan arrived. Nathan had also heard of Adonijah's plan and knew it wasn't right. He entered the room and supported Bathsheba's plea, reminding David of God's will. Nathan said, "My king, have you heard that Adonijah has made himself king without your permission? But didn't you say Solomon would be the next ruler? The people are waiting to know who you will choose." David, though old and weak, listened carefully. He knew that the future of Israel was at stake, and that his decision could not be delayed. After a moment of thought, David lifted his head and declared, "As surely as the Lord lives, I promised Solomon would be king after me, and today I will make sure that promise is fulfilled." His voice was full of determination. With that, David gave instructions to Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the commander of his guard. He ordered them to take Solomon, anoint him with sacred oil, and declare him king over all Israel. Bathsheba breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that her son would soon be the rightful ruler. Solomon would be the king chosen by both his father and by God. But the adventure wasn't over yet. Solomon still had to be anointed before all the people, and Adonijah would not be happy with this news. Now that King David had made his decision, it was time for action. David called his most trusted men, Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the commander of his royal guard. These were the men who would ensure Solomon was crowned king in front of all the people, as God had willed. David instructed them, "Take my son Solomon and place him on my royal mule. Lead him down to the spring of Gihon. There, Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet will anoint him as king over Israel. After the anointing, blow the trumpets and shout, 'Long live King Solomon!' Let all the people know that Solomon is the new king, chosen by God and by me." David's royal mule was no ordinary animal. In ancient Israel, riding the king's mule was a powerful sign of authority, and it meant that Solomon had been chosen by the king himself. The people would recognize this as a symbol of Solomon's right to the throne. So Zadok, Nathan, and Benaiah wasted no time. They placed Solomon on David's royal mule and led him through the streets. As they passed through the city, people began to gather, curious to see what was happening. The news spread quickly. Solomon, the son of King David, was being taken to be crowned as their new king. More and more people joined the crowd, following Solomon's procession as they made their way to the spring of Gihon. It was here that the most important part of the ceremony would take place. Zadok the priest carried with him a horn of sacred oil, which had been kept in the tabernacle for moments just like this. This oil symbolized God's blessing, and pouring it over Solomon's head would show that he had been chosen by God to lead Israel. As they reached the spring of Gihon, the crowd grew larger. Zadok the priest took the horn of sacred oil and poured it over Solomon's head. In that moment, Solomon became more than just the king's son. He became Israel's anointed king. The oil ran down his face and onto his robes, a sign that God's Spirit was now with him, guiding him as Israel's new leader. Then the trumpets blared loudly and the crowd erupted in cheers. "Long live King Solomon," they shouted. People danced, sang, and celebrated, knowing that their new king had been chosen by God. The sound of the celebration was so loud that it could be heard from far away, even reaching the ears of Adonijah and his followers. Meanwhile, Adonijah was holding a feast, celebrating what he thought was his rise to power. He had gathered many of Israel's leaders and military commanders to support him. But as they were feasting and rejoicing, the sound of the trumpets and the cheering crowd interrupted them. Adonijah's heart sank. "What is that noise?" he asked, worried that something had gone wrong. Soon, a messenger arrived and told Adonijah the shocking news. "Solomon has been crowned king. King David's men have anointed him, and all the people are celebrating. The city is filled with joy because Solomon now sits on the throne." Adonijah's face turned pale. He knew his plans had failed. His followers quickly scattered, afraid of what might happen to them now that Solomon was king. Adonijah feared for his life. He rushed to the altar of the Lord, where he grabbed hold of its horns, a place of sanctuary, hoping that Solomon would not punish him. But Solomon, in his first act as king, showed the wisdom and mercy that would define his reign. Solomon sent word to Adonijah, saying, "If you prove to be loyal and righteous, no harm will come to you. But if you plot against me, you will pay the price." Adonijah, knowing he had no choice, came before King Solomon and bowed low before him. Solomon spared his brother's life, showing kindness instead of revenge. And so the people of Israel rejoiced. Solomon had been anointed king, and his first act was one of wisdom and mercy. The kingdom of Israel was now in the hands of a king who would lead with justice, guided by the Lord's wisdom. This moment marked the beginning of a reign that would be remembered for Solomon's great wisdom and God's blessing upon him. Adonijah's rebellion and Solomon's response. Though Solomon had been crowned king and the people of Israel rejoiced, not everyone was ready to accept him as their ruler. Adonijah, who had already tried to claim the throne, wasn't ready to give up so easily. While Solomon was busy securing his place as king, Adonijah was secretly planning his next move. He was determined to seize the throne, even if it meant going against God's will. Adonijah gathered a group of supporters, including some of David's former advisors. Among them was Joab, the commander of Israel's army, and Abiathar, the priest. These men had once served King David, but now they were backing Adonijah's rebellion, hoping to gain power for themselves if he succeeded. Together, they began plotting a way to overthrow Solomon and take the kingdom for themselves. Solomon, however, was not unaware of what was happening. His loyal supporters, including the wise prophet Nathan, kept a close watch on Adonijah's actions. When Solomon learned of the rebellion, he knew he had to act swiftly to prevent a civil war from breaking out in Israel. Despite his youth, Solomon demonstrated great wisdom in how he handled the situation. Rather than attacking Adonijah immediately, Solomon chose to wait and see if his brother would seek peace. He sent a message to Adonijah, warning him that if he continued his rebellion, there would be consequences. Solomon's message was clear. You must prove yourself loyal to me, or you will face judgment. But instead of accepting Solomon's mercy, Adonijah pressed forward with his plans. Adonijah believed that if he could get enough powerful supporters, he could overthrow Solomon. But Solomon's next move would catch him off guard. Solomon called for Benaiah, the commander of his royal guard, and gave him a difficult task. Benaiah was to confront Joab, the military leader who had supported Adonijah's rebellion. Joab, despite being a great warrior, had been disloyal to David in his final days, and now he was leading Israel into danger by supporting Adonijah. Solomon could no longer tolerate such betrayal. Benaiah, loyal to Solomon and Israel, carried out the king's orders. Joab, realizing he had no escape, fled to the sacred altar, seeking refuge just as Adonijah had done before. But Solomon knew that Joab's rebellion could not go unpunished. Benaiah found Joab clinging to the altar and told him, "The king has ordered that you come with me." But Joab refused, saying, "I will die here." Benaiah returned to Solomon for further instructions, and Solomon gave the order that justice must be served. Joab, the mighty warrior, met his end that day, and his rebellion was put to rest. Solomon's actions, though harsh, were necessary to protect the peace and unity of Israel. The people saw that Solomon was not only a wise ruler but also a king who would not allow treachery in his kingdom. Adonijah, having witnessed Joab's fate, was filled with fear. He knew that his rebellion had failed, and there would be no escape this time. He came before Solomon, trembling with fear, and begged for mercy. But Solomon, remembering the promise he had made earlier, showed his brother mercy once more. Solomon said to him, "You have plotted against me, but I will spare your life if you remain loyal. Betray me again, and you will not be forgiven." Adonijah bowed low before Solomon, knowing that his life had been spared for the second time. Solomon's wisdom and mercy had triumphed over rebellion, and the kingdom of Israel remained strong under his leadership. Though he was young, Solomon had already proven himself to be a king who would uphold justice and show compassion, just as his father David had done. With the rebellion put to rest, Solomon's reign over Israel began in peace. The people were eager to see what kind of king Solomon would be. Many wondered if he could live up to the greatness of his father, David. But Solomon didn't seek to imitate his father's rule. He had his own style of leadership, one that was marked by wisdom and fairness. One of Solomon's first tasks as king was to establish justice across the land. He wanted to ensure that the people were treated fairly, and that no one, whether rich or poor, would be denied the justice they deserved. Solomon set up courts throughout Israel and appointed wise men to serve as judges. He made sure that even the least powerful people in the kingdom had a voice and could bring their concerns before the king. One of the most famous stories from Solomon's early reign is about two women who came to him with a very difficult problem. Both women claimed to be the mother of the same baby, and there was no way to tell who was telling the truth. Solomon, with his famous wisdom, proposed a solution that shocked everyone. Cut the baby in two and give half to each woman. The real mother immediately cried out, "No, let the other woman have the baby. Just don't hurt him." Solomon smiled, for he had seen the truth. He knew that the true mother would rather give up her child than see him harmed. He gave the baby to the woman who had shown mercy, and the people marveled at Solomon's wisdom. Word of Solomon's wisdom spread throughout the kingdom and even beyond. Leaders from other nations heard of his great understanding and came to Israel to seek his advice. People began to trust in Solomon's leadership, and the kingdom grew stronger under his guidance. Solomon's early reign was a time of peace, prosperity, and most importantly, justice. His wisdom, a gift from God, guided his every decision, and the people knew they had a king who truly cared about them. Solomon's journey from the son of King David to the ruler of Israel was full of challenges, but with God's guidance, he became one of the greatest kings in the Bible. His wisdom and fairness led Israel into a time of peace and prosperity. Solomon trusted in God's plan for his life, and by doing so, he became a leader who was loved and respected by his people. As we've seen, being a good leader isn't about power or wealth. It's about making wise decisions, showing kindness, and following God's ways. Solomon showed us that true wisdom comes from God, and when we trust in Him, we can face any challenge that comes our way. So remember, kids, you don't have to be a king or queen to make a difference. By making wise choices and trusting God, you can be a leader in your own life, just like Solomon. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through Solomon's story. If you enjoyed learning about Solomon, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing Bible stories for kids. See you next time.